is Laura Lorek, and I am the CEO and founder of Silicon Hills News, which is a technology news publication that covers Austin and San Antonio tech entrepreneurs and other startups like CPG founders. And today I have the pleasure to interview John Paulos, who has been an active angel investor since 2008, having invested in more than 50 companies and held numerous board and advisory roles. He also formerly served as the board chair of the Central Texas Angel Network, known as CTAN, and before becoming a full-time angel investor, John spent 15 years in the semiconductor industry, most recently as Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Industrial Products Division of Cirrus Logic. Prior to that, he served as Vice President of Engineering at Cicada Semiconductor, an Austin startup acquired by Vitesse Semiconductor in 2004. Was that right?
Vitesse, yeah.
Vitesse Semiconductor in 2004. John started his career as a faculty member of the North Carolina State University, where he held the post of tenured associate professor until he left academia for the private sector in 1993. He holds BS, MS, and PhD degrees in electrical engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
So John, first off, why did you decide to become an angel investor?
Well, a couple reasons. One, of course, I'm a technologist by background, and I've had a startup experience of my own, so I kind of understood the space and the realities of being involved in a startup. But all my life I've been a stock market junkie, so I just live to find obscure stocks that are going to explode and do wonderful things. And if you were trying to beat the market, the thing you look for is an inefficient marketplace. And investing in early stage companies is the most inefficient market I've ever found. So that's kind of really how I got into it.
And can you tell us a little bit about CTAN? I know at one time it was the most active angel investing network in the country.
Yeah, CTAN is a Central Texas Angel Network. It's here in Austin. It's a classic traditional angel network. As you say, just before the pandemic hit, a couple of years before the pandemic, we were ranked in the top 5, and one year we were the top single chapter angel group in the country in terms of the amount of investing we did. And in that span of time, we were typically doing $12, $13, $14 million a year of direct investment into early stage companies.
And can you tell us about the last company that you invested in and why?
Well, let me tell you about the company. The next one I'm going to write a check for.
Okay.
So it's a company that has a medical device that makes it safer to deliver drugs through intravenous hookups. It's called Safe Push. And the thing I liked about it was that it's meeting a real safety need in hospitals, but the dynamics are such that if the hospital goes through the evaluation of the product and decides that it really is a safer approach to doing this, then it would become the standard of care for the hospital, which means that the sales process pays for itself. You can have a good, efficient sales process because you win the entire hospital. It's not something that would be optional. Every nurse would have to use it. Every doctor would have to use it. And I've been involved in some medical devices where even after you win the approval at the hospital, if the doctors decide not to use it, there's no revenue. So that aspect of it, which is really an aspect of the business dynamics of how that product gets sold, was really for me the pivot in terms of making it an attractive investment.
And medical devices, they don't need as much FDA regulation as like a drug development company that could take like 15 years or something.
No, that's true, right. Typically, medical device companies don't have to do clinical trials. Usually they only do clinical trials if they need it for their marketing and to prove what their device can do.
And what do you look for when you make an investment? Is there anything in particular that an entrepreneur can say to you that just, that's it?
No, there's not one thing. I'm fairly agnostic in terms of verticals I look at. I look at particular kind of companies. Given my background in the chip business, I pretty much only focus on B2B because I understand that space. The consumer world totally confounds me. But most often, I'm looking for companies that have got a really strong proprietary technology that's gonna apply into a fairly focused market, and where there's a good chance that they will be in a kind of a dominant position in that market, even if the market itself is not that big. So I'm usually looking for companies that have got a modest TAM, but one that they've got an edge that would really allow them to dominate it.
And you've dealt with a lot of entrepreneurs over the years, you've heard a bunch of pitches, and there's a bunch of entrepreneurs in the room. So can you tell us, are there certain traits of an entrepreneur that are particularly that attractive to you, that you look for in an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, the most essential thing, in fact, I think it's the thing that defines entrepreneurs, is the willingness and the ability to focus on this one mission of making a company successful and having it be what you do 24/7, 365, which is something I could never do. So I'm always kind of in awe of people who can do that. But putting that aside, I mean, communication is an important piece. And frankly, just being open and transparent is an important piece. But the other thing I look for, or at least if I don't see it, it typically is something that will kind of turn me off, is if the person, it doesn't have some authentic street cred in their industry. So I'm looking for people, if they're doing something in space XYZ, it's a space that they've lived in and they understand where the customer lives and really what their needs and challenges are.
That's what Live Oak Partners calls deep domain experience that they look for, background. But what should an entrepreneur not do when they pitch C10? I'm sure you've gone through a lot of pitch sessions, so there's certain things that entrepreneurs do that immediately in the pitch session for you.
Yeah, probably the quickest turnoff is to argue with me. So entrepreneurs are funny. They pitch to investors, but kind of miss the point that they're pitching to investors who are looking to evaluate the business. So the big mistake entrepreneurs typically make is that they continue to pitch their product when what they really need to be doing is pitching the business. Then, as I invest, I'll never invest company because I saw it once. I want to see it multiple times. I like to be in due diligence, live meetings with the entrepreneurs, with other investors too, so I can hear the questions they're asking. And it's pretty much a bet that I will hear the entrepreneur respond to the same question a couple of different times. And being consistent and transparent in that process is extremely important. And ultimately what you're looking for is an entrepreneur who listens and who learns from every engagement they have with investors as they develop their pitch and refine their business strategy.
And what is the average size check that C10 writes? I know it's left up to the individual angel investors to write the checks, but is there an average size?
There's more range. Most companies will set $25,000 as a minimum size to write a check to be on the cap table, which is what our angel investors are doing. Sometimes companies will let C10 members come in with smaller checks. It's almost never less than $10,000. The biggest checks that come in are probably in the $200K range. So probably the mode of the distribution is a $25,000 check, but the average is probably more like 40 or 50.
And what do you think of the current economic environment that Austin's in? We're hearing a lot about the meltdown of some of the Bitcoin trading platforms and other things that are going on right now, layoffs in tech. How do you think Austin is going to fare through all this?
Well, Austin's in a great place relative to where they've been most of the time I've been in Austin. I came to Austin in 1993. It was pulling teeth to get people to move to Austin to take a chip design job. And then, I was in a startup that raised money, thankfully, just before the 2000 bubble burst. And pretty much by 2002, every California VC shop that had an office in Austin was gone. And then we had a long desert before those funds started coming back and we started growing some local funds. So it's a much better environment than it's ever been. I think that trumps the cyclical position we're in. But the cyclical situation we're in, to me, has more to do with just having been through this bubble where too much money was being thrown at companies that they really couldn't spend productively. And there'll be, a hangover from that, but I don't think it changes anything fundamentally.
So is it a good time to invest in startups?
I think it's always a good time to invest in startups, and you can make an argument that frankly, at the bottom of the cycle is the best time to invest, but I don't pay attention to that a lot. It has much less effect at the seed stage than it does at the later stages. I mean, the C and D round valuations and what's happened in that world, that goes through much bigger booms and busts than seed stage. Seed stage is in a crazy way, is more grounded in kind of what's the company need to get out of the chute, tangibly, what is it we need to do with this money in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And those valuations don't cycle as much, and that activity is kind of always there.
And what is the best way for entrepreneurs to get in touch with you, to communicate with you?
Well, the best way to get in touch with me is to apply to the Central Texas Angel Network. Because I've been on the board, because of how involved I am with the Central Texas Angel Network, I tend not to look at deals outside of our deal flow. So the best way to get to me is actually to apply to CTAN. And as I said, I'm not a consumer-focused person. I don't participate in any social media of any kind. It just doesn't appeal to me. But we'll spend time talking to any entrepreneur that comes through our program and wants some time.
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks.